We always celebrate many heroes of our country, whether in sports, the arts, or even political heroes who have left this world. While this is a great exercise to help in shaping the society's character and develop future leaders in those sectors, we have been neglecting heroes who have walked among us. It has always troubled me how we have always celebrated people who have never met us. But once we lay our beloved ones to rest, we forget them and the impact they have had on us and the lessons they have left us. This lecture series is my way of correcting that. It's an honor for me to present this third lecture on Baba Shedrack Ntombela. He holds an honorary degree in one of the universities in the States. He was a great guy, and I'm humbled to do this. When Bishop Twala spoke about him at his passing, he uttered the following words: "A big tree has fallen indeed. A passionate soul winner and a church planter, a loving father, a husband, Mpangazitha, Malandela, Zugula, Sishosho, Skandaba, Mahlobo." I've spent a great part of my life at the Maranatha Church. For many years, that was the church I knew, my home church. I was born to a pastor of the Guatemala branch of the church. My father, whose lecture I complete the series with after this one. Like many churches led by charismatic leaders, a lot of us were in awe of the enigma that Baba was, as he was called. He was respected for the ministry he had been leading and how God had been using him to impact communities, drawing many leaders towards the Maranatha brand. Baba had a novel strategy of evangelism and church growth. This strategy, as I observed from a distance, included commitment to great music and a youthful exuberance. When he left the African Gospel Church as a young preacher, he became a threat to many older pastors who feared losing members to this young, energetic evangelist who was also gifted with music and was a great preacher. The Maranatha Church grew fast in its early years. I think this can be attributed to this strategy. It was hard to encounter Baba's ministry and not be in awe. As a young boy, I caught up to this magnetism. When we visited the church conferences in Newcastle, which we did twice a year in April and December, we had a great anticipation, and our experience was never foiled. Apart from meeting friends, making new friends, enjoying the music by the Maranatha band, I always look forward to catching a glimpse of this man. I would always picture him in a white suit and a black shirt and a white tie, ascending the stage with his signature hoarse voice, that belted hymns in a way only he would. He had a way to engage the audience with his punctuated utterances that the audience would complete. I was intrigued by that. He would say, for example, "Kumele sithandazele abo mama nabo," and the audience was supposed to continue to finish off and say, "Baba." Even when he started a song, he would leave it halfway and let us continue his train of song. That was his signature. It was amazing to behold. One of his signature songs in those days and many years after was the eschatological anthem, Ngapeshe. His rendition of this song, backed by the most dynamic band I've ever heard at the time, would catapult you to the point of readiness for the coming of the Lord. Baba was a true definition of charisma, a compelling attractiveness or charm that can inspire devotion in others. I know that I had a deep desire to meet him on a closer level and to work with him. I wanted to join the band, even though at that time my piano skills were too basic to even be considered. I spent the next few years working on my skills, and the inspiration of people like Ureji, Uchakonia, and others, Olinkosi, helped me get better by the day. Sometimes he would visit Kwatema, my home. It would be a great feeling just having him walk in and greet us, shake his hand with that captivating smile. I loved that man from that time. As part of our annual pilgrimages to Newcastle, we had a strong musical team from the Guatemala branch of the church. It had to be because we were members of the dynamic youth, the heavenly youth. The fire would be carried with us wherever we went. We became a notable force in the Maranatha conferences until we were noticed. When the Maranatha band keyboardist left, they struggled to find a replacement. I was approached to join. At that time, it coincided with my matric year end. I jumped at the opportunity. My keyboarding skills were much better. Newcastle had become close to my heart, and going there felt like dreams coming true. It was in those 4 years spent living with him, working with him, that I appreciate greater the gift that he was. I was honored to serve as his personal secretary for over 3 years. I received his correspondence and sometimes would respond even before he could see the letters, as I had managed to capture his thinking on issues raised in many a letter. Perhaps one day I will tell of my journey in that space. But today, I'm focused on the impact of Baba Ntombela on my life, lessons I learned from him, and why I'm celebrating him. A few things gave me a perspective on him, caused me to respect him, his call, and his journey in the faith and in life. I will mention just a few. One, he was a wise man. Even though he had no formal education, he had immense wisdom that caused him to lead even many who had high educational credentials. I've watched him sit and listen to people speak to him, and he will respond after a while with a brief word of wisdom that will be a solution to the matters at hand. When you think about the gifts of the Spirit as enumerated in the Bible, you realize that gifts that are getting airplay are those overt dreams that are exercised on public platforms like healings, miracles, blah, blah. However, the more subtle gifts are rare to find discussed or even claimed. I'm convinced if I'd ever seen a man with the gift of wisdom, Baba was one of them. The growth of the Maranatha brand was a combination of his gift of faith and wisdom. I've heard the story of how he would go to the music shops with no money to take quotations of a complete sound equipment and musical instrument, planning to build a band one day. In that act was faith and wisdom, knowing what strategies he plans to employ to build a ministry that will disrupt the current status quo. And it did. The longevity of his ministry is also evidenced by the fact that my own mother worked with Ubaba, my aunt sang in Baba's group, My father was the founding secretary of the Maranatha Church, a position he held over years and years until he left the ministry to find the Herald Bible Church. His organic wisdom is also demonstrated at how he managed to overcome the disadvantages of growing up in one of the most rural areas in Mount. Overcame the disadvantage of lacking formal education and went on to achieve what many could only dream of. Studied at a prestigious leadership institution in Singapore. Studied at the Oral Roberts University Bible Institution. Built a denomination with over 200 churches. Connected with leadership in government circles and was an influential voice in government and business. Managed to establish networks in the United States with some of the churches electing to submit under his leadership. That is no small feat for a man who was not educated. He was wise. The second thing about him is that he was a forgiving man. One of his memorable sermons was when he preached about a text in James that says, "Be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger." That message has stayed in my heart for a long time. He even preached another one that said, "What shall we say to these things?" I've heard him preach this message of being quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger many times, but more importantly, I've seen him live this injunction. I've watched him being backstabbed by some of the leadership that he had embraced. Some he had defended at times when they could have been destroyed by their own indiscretions. He extended a hand of fellowship and embraced them. Later on, they will turn against him, but he never expressed a shred of revenge, always giving them the benefit of a doubt. He would embrace people who had gone on a spree of soiling his reputation, to a point where one would wonder why he is forgiving them. He embraced many prodigals who came to him when things did not turn out the way they had hoped. I'm yet to see a man who exercised forgiveness like this man. I speak as one who had had an experience of being forgiven by him. Forgiveness is the easier part of this process. The difficult part is to embrace the one who has hurt you and forget the indiscretions they have had towards you. The third thing about Ubaba was that he didn't buy the schelem. One of the things that drew my attention to him was his refusal to twist the truth to accommodate young people. At a time when churches were becoming popular by lessening the expectations from young people, allowing young people to do things that were not accepted at the time in the Christian circles. He did not compromise. I grew up at the Maranatha Church during a time when many of the teachings that were inherited from a fallen American church were rejected. In spite of their text that the church is teaching tradition, the church continued to call for a holy living among members and rejected expressions of worldliness. They rejected worldliness expressions, taught holiness, even though they were attacked as a traditional church. I can recall his many warnings that we must be wary of the gospel from the west, carrying the spirit from the north, a message he preached over and over again. It was a warning that has been ignored by the generation today, which has turned churches into relics of materialism and mirrors of the club life where Satan is worshipped through drugs and sex cults. The difference between the church and clubs has vanished. They look the same. One of the things we can do to honor a man like this is to revive his teachings and call on our children to hold on to the biblical injunction with no fear of being ridiculed. 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Baba had a disarming smile. His wardrobe was impeccable. He sang with a unique voice that pierced. He loved people. Those who learned from him continue to celebrate the father that he was. When I learned of his passing away, I was bedridden and could not make it to his funeral. I understand he was sent off like a king. Life without him is not the same, but we know what he believed about death. A few years before he passed on, he was speaking at the burial of my father, and his comforting words are apt to be repeated in honor of his own departure. I say this with no fear of contradiction. There are many areas of my own ministry and leadership that can be attributed to his influence over my life. In 1991, while on a mission trip in East London, on the morning set apart for baptism of new converts, I asked him if I could be baptized, having accepted Christ 7 months earlier in a similar event. He looked at me and said, "Here is the water. If you have believed, nothing prevents you from being baptized." On that day, I was baptized by Sipho Ntombela. And I must say, great men have walked among us, and we celebrate his life.